It ended 4-0 to Bulgaria. We had a good percentage of the ball. Yeah, hi.
4-0 to Bulgaria, you said.
Oh, did I? I'll do it again.
That's your intro again.
Welcome to the Side Foot Pass podcast. I'm Adrian, along with my co-host today, Jack.
Hello.
We host a weekly show sharing our insights and opinions with special guests throughout the season. In this week's episode, it's slightly different. We discuss the England fixtures that happened this last week. So Jack, covering for Mike this week, how have you been doing? Nice to be back.
Very well, thank you. Lovely to be back on the show. Obviously, always a pleasure to have a chat with you about the football. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Cool. We're just going to go quickly over the international break. Although it's primarily a Premier League podcast, we will cover it, seeing as we've had a couple of weeks break from the normality. So we had the England game against Bulgaria. It ended up 4-0 to England. We had a lot of possession, 68%, 17 shots, 6 on target, where Bulgaria had 32%, 4 shots, all of them on target. From watching it, I really thought we were good attacking, and I think we struggled defensively. We were quite open at the back, and Keane and Maguire didn't have the greatest of games being in centre-back position. I don't think Maguire personally should be always there, because he hasn't had a good 4 weeks for Man U, and maybe Southgate should have given someone else a go. What are your thoughts on the overall performance of England in this particular game?
Yeah, completely agree. He's gone with Southgate's obviously started with quite a young England lineup, quite an attacking team as well, with Trippier one side and Rose the other. So the full backs obviously looking to press. The centre backs is where I wasn't so sure on the England team. So Michael Keane hasn't necessarily had the easiest rub of the green at Everton. And performances of last season and early this season as well haven't been too convincing. So we're surprised to see him start ahead of someone like Joe Gomez. Maguire, as you say, don't think he's settled into life at United yet. I don't think he's quite hit the ground running as people expected him to. And there were a couple of cracks in that England defence, and to be exposed by Bulgaria is not great. But this is, as we say, it's a young England team. They're going to take time to learn. Not a lot of them have a vast amount of international experience. So it's just getting these players minutes. And it's one of those games you'd expect England to win. You can experiment with the team. So all in all, it was a decent result. Not the strongest defensive performance, but lots to go off for the attackers. Obviously, Kane scoring a hat-trick and Sterling getting on the score sheet. Nothing too much to write home about. A bit of an expected result, but Bulgaria looked strong in certain areas of the game. England just could do with tightening up at the back, maybe putting in someone like Joe Gomez, experimenting with the squad a little bit more as well, and not being too afraid to kind of change from this player plays for Manchester United, so he should automatically start. It's kind of one of those being able to make the decisions based on performance, let alone without reputation.
Yeah, exactly. And I think me and Mike discussed this briefly last week of really Southgate does look like he does choose his performance over whatever your name is, but with the centre-backs, I don't think he went for that, where although Villa haven't had a great time, maybe it would have been a good time to put Mings on as centre-back. It was also a choice made to have Danny Rose start rather than Chilwell, although Chilwell has started for the Kosovo game. Although it was 4-0, it could have easily been, I think Bulgaria could have scored twice, and if it had ended up 2-2 at half-time, or something on those lines, because Kane had a hat-trick, 2 penalties. It was a win, yes, but was it convincing enough for probably the weakest team in that league? I don't think so. I would have liked, a total. They shouldn't have had anything on target. They should have, if Bulgaria was shooting outside the box, that's fine. But there was a few occasions where you kind of grit your teeth and go, that could have easily gone in. That could have been a different story altogether.
I think talking about clinical finishing and England taking their chances, Bulgaria only had 4 shots on target, but they forced Pickford into a save, obviously from the free kick that was from England's own making, and Michael Keane and Harry Maguire. I think it's Keane that actually gives the free kick away. But it's those defensive weaknesses and maybe being exploited a little bit at the back that could catch us out if we were playing a team that was slightly better with their finishing. You look at the first goal for England that Harry Kane scores, and it's a mistake at the back from Bulgaria, and England didn't really make anything too dissimilar to that in the chances that Bulgaria had. It's just England were able to finish the chance, and Bulgaria couldn't convert. So, in terms of from an attacking point of view, that's obviously promising. Is that the strikers are finishing the chances, but defensively, as you say, maybe this was the game where you can experiment. Obviously, against Kosovo, you can actually kind of try new things with the team and maybe go Mings and Gomez. But Keane and Maguire, I don't think is the future of England's centre back partnership. I don't know whether John Stones has picked up an injury, but I'm surprised not to see him in the squad at all. So maybe that's something that England will look at heading into the Euros. But I don't think I can't necessarily see us going anywhere with Michael Keane at the back.
Yeah, I think the first half was a lot of zonal marking. There wasn't a lot of man marking, and that's where they started to Bulgaria kind of broke down the defence and could get a couple of counter attacks. But yeah, like I say, I think this group stage should be an easy win by the end of it, and these are the times where Southgate should be experimenting with different types of formations, although it always goes to 4-3-3, but I mean a different squad, and see which ones are working best. And he should really always go with who's best on club form, and I hope people like Maddison and Mount do start to get involved more and push into regular first team football, which would be great. And it was nice to see Oxlade-Chamberlain make his appearance for England squad since March 2018. Came on for Kane, because obviously Kane had his standing ovation after his hat-trick, so that was nice to see as well.
It's nice to see Oxlade-Chamberlain come back into the fold with England. I think from Southgate, that's actually a really good coup, because it's a bit of confidence building for Chamberlain. It's one of those where he's almost being invited back into the fold at England, and it's saying, yeah, you've been out with injury, but that doesn't impact your playing ability. And you can make the argument that if he wasn't injured during the time of the World Cup, then he starts a lot of those games based on his performances for Liverpool towards that time. So in terms of the squad, kind of disappointed not to see Tammy Abraham being given a go. And you do think that Callum Wilson hasn't necessarily had the best start to the season for Bournemouth. So there could have been a few changes there based on the goals scored. So I do think there are a couple of players that have got in based on reputation alone. Trippier looks to have started well at Atletico, so you can completely understand that. Ross Barkley, I don't watch Chelsea too closely, but I don't think he's really contributed too much. Certainly not as much as Mason Mount in the early stages of the season. So I think this England squad, it's just an experimental squad. It's a lot of young players. He's not been afraid to chop and change. And obviously Kyle Walker's missed out as well. So I think Southgate is very much going from a youthful prospect point of view rather than a reputation. There are still a couple of picks in there.
Right, other than the England fixtures, I wanted to speak briefly about the Champions League groups, which were announced a week ago now, and just want to run through them of where the England teams have been drawn into. Let's start with Group B, where Tottenham have found themselves with Bayern Munich, Olympiacos and Red Star Belgrade. I think that's quite a tough group for Tottenham to go in. There's no easy win there that you can see, and it's going to be a struggle to get into the final 16, do you not think?
Yeah, I think for Tottenham, it's Bayern Munich's never going to be an easy game, especially an away fixture at the Allianz Arena. I think they're well equipped from a squad point of view, performance-wise, based on the Premier League performances this season. They haven't been great. I wouldn't fancy a trip to Red Star Belgrade. Obviously, Liverpool did that last season and got beat 2-0 and quite comfortably for Red Star Belgrade. It's an intimidating stadium to go to. Olympiacos, they're a club that have been synonymous with European football, synonymous with Liverpool Football Club from 2005. Obviously, the Steven Gerrard goal is massively pivotal in Liverpool's success. If I was Tottenham, I wouldn't be too delighted at the prospect of that group. You'd expect them to go through, but it's the travelling that can really play a big part in the Premier League season as well. So I wouldn't be too keen on that group, but I think compared to other groups, they've got off quite lightly.
Yeah, I think really they should be heading for probably to finish in second. Well, I would imagine they'll try and push for there. And like you say, Bayern Munich's going to be a very difficult fixture for them. Moving on to Group C, Man City have ended up there with Shakhtar, Dynamo Zagreb and Atalanta from Italy. Probably slightly easier group than what Tottenham would have, and I would expect them to finish top. But again, Shakhtar and Zagreb would probably be their main oppositions in that group. They might have a bit of an easier go.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that Atalanta are no mugs. They've gotten some really good results last season, especially against some of the big teams. I think they beat Juventus in one of the Italian cups, and in the league certainly got a point. They've performed well against teams like AC Milan and Inter, and they deserve their place in the Champions League. So it's important to remember that they're not a bad side, and they certainly can't be taken for granted. In terms of the rest of the group, Dynamo Zagreb, you'd expect Manchester City to beat them quite comfortably. And again, Shakhtar, they're top of the Ukrainian Premier League. They did prove a little bit difficult last season for City as well, because this is a similar pairing in the group. City, I think they've got the best group from the English teams. However, again, lots of travel that I wouldn't fancy. But Atalanta's the key fixture for me, because I think they could actually get something, and they could be the ones that qualify ahead of Shakhtar. City, you'd expect to win the group, especially with the squad depth that they've got. Their bench is basically good enough to beat most teams in the Premier League, if not every team. So you'll see a lot of rotation within the European compared to the English game for Manchester City, and I think I'd expect them to come out with either maximum points or approximately 15. So I think they'll do well.
Yeah, I agree with that one. And for Group E, yourselves as a Liverpool fan, you were talking about the travel. It's probably easier that you've got Italy, Austria, and Belgium to travel to. So this is Liverpool, Napoli, Salzburg, and Ghent that you'll have, and I would expect you to finish top. But obviously, out of these, they're all in Champions League football. They're all good, but I would imagine Napoli would be one of your hardest opponents on that particular group.
Yeah, Napoli's the fixture that stands out. Liverpool didn't get the result away from home last season. This is another repeat in the group stages from last year, so they need to follow the similar pattern of last season and get the result at home. Compared to their away travels, they certainly got better towards the end of the competition. I'm happy with the group stage, staying within a similar region within Europe. So Genk in Belgium, that they're a good side, and you certainly can't take any game for granted in the Champions League. But you'd expect Liverpool to come away 2 or 3-0 away from home, 3 or 4 at home. I think easily Red Bull Salzburg in Austria, top of the league. They've won all of their games this season. They look like they're going to blitz the league again. So none of these games you can take lightly, especially the Napoli fixture. But you would expect Liverpool to finish either top or second. Anything other than that's a huge shock and a failure for the club. So to build on last season, we need some good results in the group stage. Beat Napoli clearly at home, and Napoli's the opening game. So that's going to take a big result there. Go to Belgium, go to Austria, get the results away from home, because you'd fancy Liverpool at home against any of these teams on a European night.
Yeah, and I think other than the last group, which has got Chelsea in, Group F and Group G are ram-packed with good football teams, especially Group F. We've got Barcelona, Borussia Dortmund and Inter in there, and that's going to be a difficult group for... I'm just glad none of us English sides got that, because if you were where Slavia Prague are, if you entered into there, you would not be looking forward to these fixtures, would you?
Well, you can see the reactions of the club representatives within the draw as well. They were laughing because they're almost ruling themselves out of the group stage of the Champions League. They've basically knocked themselves out in their own minds. So that doesn't fill you with confidence if you're a Slavia Prague fan. You'd expect them to finish with no points, really. Dortmund are a great side, home and away. Obviously, Sancho is having a really good year again. And they've got lots of attacking threats within the team. So Pablo Alcacer, great striker with great finishing ability. They've got Marco Reus one side and they've got Sancho the other. So their front three and their attacking line is really promising. Barcelona will be the team you'd expect to see win the group, but Inter Milan can certainly rustle a few feathers within that group as well. You'd expect Prague to not really come away with anything, but Milan have recruited well, the likes of Lukaku. It'll be interesting to see what Sanchez can do over there as well, and whether or not he can return to the form that he showed at Arsenal and Barcelona. I'd be expecting Barcelona and Inter Milan to actually qualify. I can see Dortmund maybe dropping points, but that one it's very similar to Group G in that there's a lot of teams around the same ability or that can certainly win their home fixtures, maybe not their away. So it's going to be a case of who gets the better result home and away, and who can beat Slavia Prague more convincingly as well. It's important to remember when talking about the Champions League that in the group stage, it's determined who goes through based on head-to-head now, not goal difference. So Dortmund will be looking to get a really good result against Milan. Milan will be looking to do the same. Every game is important in this group now, so it's one of those you can't drop a single point, and every team's going to be looking over their shoulder.
Yeah, I agree, and I think with any of these games now, I suppose it puts more pressure on making sure you get that result whether you're home and away, especially when you're at home because, like you said, it's not on the away goals, and it's going to be difficult, isn't it? Especially with the Premier League fixtures and how important it is to all of these English sides, for example, that you do want to finish in that top six. You want to guarantee that you're going to have Champions League football again next year. And I don't know. Also, you can finish third, can't you? And you go back to the Europa stage, which a couple of our sides did last year, and they didn't do too bad, did they? Because it was Chelsea and Liverpool in the end in the overall Champions Cup, wasn't it?
It's nice to see English clubs competing and dominating the European stage. From being a Liverpool fan, there's nothing better than seeing your team lift the European Cup, and the one that matters. The Europa League isn't a trophy that I ever really want to be associated with. It's a big fixture pile up on a Thursday. You've got, Premier League games then have to be reverted back to a Sunday or a Monday night. So it does cause a lot of disruption within the season, and there's more fixtures within the Europa League. So any team that's in the Champions League will be looking to stay within the competition. It's not going to be an option to, it's fine because we'll drop into the Europa League. The financial incentive for these clubs now to stay in European football, especially the Champions League, and the gate revenue that brings in, the TV money that will bring in, is absolutely incredible and can change a club's fortunes. So Group G, we're looking at Benfica, we're looking at Lyon, RB Leipzig, and Zenit. All four teams you could see trading results throughout the group stage. So it's going to be difficult to pick a clear two. My opinion will be that potentially Leipzig and Benfica will go through, but Zenit and Lyon, that's probably the hardest group to predict out of all of them.
Yeah, they're all very similar, aren't they? On par level.
Yeah, certainly. With each team has their own individual style, but Leipzig, Timo Werner's the key player in that group. He can dictate where Leipzig end up. He's world class. Bayern Munich have been sniffing around him. Liverpool have been looking at signing him, as well as Manchester United, Chelsea. He's coveted by a lot of European elite clubs. So I can see this being his last season at Leipzig. There've been a couple of contractual disagreements between the player and the club, so they might be looking to actually get a fee while they can in January, because I believe that he might be a free agent at the end of the season. So that can obviously dictate a lot as to how the team play. Zenit, really, really good performing team, expressive and expansive on the ball, very attacking side, and an intimidating away fixture as well. Lyon, losing Nabil Fekir is going to be a big one for those, but they've recruited well. They've still got Memphis Depay, who on his day can be up there with some of the world's best and make special things happen. Benfica losing João Felix is a big one, so we'll see what happens with their attacking force this season. But all four of those teams, you can make a legitimate case for going through from the group stage. So it's going to be a tough one to finish fourth, because it's going to be a very tough pill to swallow to go back into the Europa League, because all of these teams are equally matched in and could possibly progress to the quarterfinals and the semis. Look at Ajax last season, the underdogs. So anything can happen in the Champions League.
Yeah, and that's why it should be the most exciting thing that you watch other than the Premier League, well, in my opinion anyway. And I always used to look forward to sitting down and watching those during the midweek, because I couldn't afford to watch it on Sky. With Group H, where Chelsea have ended up, like you said, Ajax were the underdogs last year, and they're in that group with them from the Netherlands. Valencia from Spain, and you got Lille from France. That is another very on par, and considering where Chelsea are performing in the Premier League at this time, we'd like to see them up there, but I don't know. I don't see them running away with this, and like Group G, it's going to be very close matches, interesting to watch, and I'd like to see Ajax perform. And considering the international result from the Netherlands this week, I hope a few of their players can push forward and get a few goals.
Yeah, Ajax are a completely different side to what they were last season. You look at the squad and the players that they've now sold. So Frankie de Jong's gone to Barcelona, and that's a huge signing for them, and obviously a huge miss for Ajax, and the same with Matthijs de Ligt at the back. So Ajax might not be as strong as they were last season, but they can certainly pull off a big result, as proven again last season. So Chelsea, I think, might struggle in this group. Valencia are a really good side. They've got lots of attacking options and a really, really good squad at their disposal. And Lille, look at the impact. They finished second in the French league last season. They're obviously missing Nicolas Pepe as the big goal scoring threat, but I think Chelsea might struggle this season, especially with the squad depth. Mason Mount and Tammy Abraham coming in. They're going to take a lot of the Premier League games, and Olivier Giroud is probably going to be the man called upon to lead the line in Europe. But I think this is where the issue of not being able to sign players will come in, because Chelsea's depth might be great in youth prospects and players that have been out on loan, but they're not players with a wealth of European experience in competitions. So it's going to be a real test for them, and the travel isn't as tough as someone like Manchester City or Tottenham, where they've got to traipse all across Europe. But they are going to struggle against teams like this. We've seen them struggle against Sheffield United in games that they should be winning. So it's going to be a difficult one. I think Lille can offer a lot of problems. Valencia certainly can, but Ajax are the team that I'd be looking at to qualify alongside Chelsea. And if it's not Chelsea, I think you might see Valencia in the following stages of the knockout stages of the Champions League, certainly.
So moving on from there, because the Premier League wonderfully returns this weekend for week 5 of the Premier League, I thought we'd go through the fixtures and just speak about our opinions on them and maybe give a couple of predictions. I haven't put my scores down or anything this time, so it'll be off the cuff just like yourself, so it'll be interesting. First match, which is so happens to be Saturday the 14th of September, it is Liverpool versus Newcastle at Anfield at 12:30. Well, I say last week, it was 2 weeks ago now, wasn't it? You beat Burnley. You did obviously quite well on that one. And Newcastle, after their win the previous week, they drew against Watford. But there is a bit of news about Watford over the last week, and they sacked their manager, didn't they? After 4 weeks, which Garcia has been sacked, and Flores, who obviously used to be their head coach in 2015 and 2016. Obviously, Flores has gone back in to be at the helm of Watford. Do you think it was too early to sack the manager after 4 weeks? I know they've only got 1 point, but was it deserved sacking? You know, would you have done something different? What do you think he's now going to change now the new manager's in?
I think this decision's been made on motivating the players. Gracia has now gone. I can't say it's a surprising decision when you get 1 point from your opening 4, and a lot of those games are games you'd be expected to win. Look at the first game of the season. They weren't just beaten by Brighton, they were absolutely battered. And Brighton aren't a team that you'd expect to do quite a lot this season. So in order to get that result, you have to play quite poorly. Watford, they haven't looked great all season. They haven't really been an attacking threat. -6 on goal difference and 1 point from their opening 4 games. And as we've mentioned, games that they should be winning. It's not a surprise that Garcia's gone. And I think the main surprise is seeing Flores appointed back at the club. So we'll see how that one works. But I think it's a way of getting the players back on side, getting new tactics, and potentially getting the fans back on side as well, because there was a lot of animosity towards the manager the last few games. So I think it's making a decision early because the season hasn't started so well for them. in order to try and get a couple of points on the board and motivate the players to do much better in the game. So
Newcastle haven't had the greatest of starts, have they either? And obviously Liverpool have had great time, really. But where do you think this is going to go score-wise, and who's going to be your first scorer?
I think Liverpool have way too much class about them to be dropping points to Newcastle, especially at Anfield. The home record is exceptional. And Liverpool haven't lost a game in a long time now, since Man City last season. So
it was reported that thousands of fans hadn't renewed their season tickets either. They were refusing to fill Mike Ashley's pockets, which obviously is, for fans, your team's doing bad. There's another reason why you didn't want to give them any money in the first place.
Newcastle, as you say, there's a lot of animosity at the club. The fans do not want Mike Ashley in charge. Mike Ashley is appearing like he doesn't want to be at the club. Steve Bruce has got an important result over the last couple of fixtures, and 4 points from their opening four, based on everything that we've talked about. The lack of renewal in season tickets, fan distress, and a lot of animosity towards the owners and the management choice. I don't think they've done too badly. So I think they might offer a couple of challenges, but Liverpool experience at the back, Virgil van Dijk has came in and solidified Liverpool's whole defence. Alexander-Arnold and Robertson are great attacking threats, and Joel Matip offers the perfect partner right now to sit alongside Van Dijk and just stop balls from being pinged in at Adrian or Alisson, whoever takes the keeper position in this one, because I think Alisson's coming back from an injury. So Liverpool probably go for Fabinho, Henderson, and potentially Wijnaldum in midfield. Quite workmanlike set up to cover the back four and offer that protection. But so it's the front three where Liverpool really flourish. The likes of Salah, Mane, and Firmino, you'd all expect to start. And each individual on their day can offer something very, very different and can produce some incredible moments. Salah against Chelsea is one to remember from last season. Firmino scores a cracking goal against Burnley, and Mane does really well and either gets an assist or a goal basically every game. So you'd expect Liverpool to quite convincingly beat Newcastle at Anfield, potentially a 3 or 4-0. That's what I'd be hoping for anyway. A nice clean sheet in the league.
The FIFA 20 card ratings came out, and quite a few people have said that Firmino's only got 86, from what I understand, and it was quite weird because I think when we spoke a couple of weeks ago on this podcast, you were saying he's basically the main man there. Really, he works day in day out for Liverpool, and I was like, oh, maybe he should be like an 88 or an 89. And I think Mane's gone up to an 88. I know it's a game, etc., but that's what people talk about. This is what people play, so it was just quite an interesting one.
Yeah, I think as a Liverpool fan, it's a tough pill to swallow when you don't really see an upgrade in the players' ratings on a game that is widely renowned as the best footballing game on the planet. So when Firmino has a great season like he did last year and has started so well this season, and he doesn't get an upgrade or at least a minimal upgrade at best, and then someone like Jesse Lingard is being rated 82 and hasn't seen any downgrade, I don't think. So it's when you get comparisons like that and players, yes, in different positions, but that haven't done anything for a long time maintain, and then a player who has done so much for a club maintains as well. It can be a bitter pill to swallow for some fans, and I think Liverpool fans have not taken that one well. To the Premier League, Firmino has such an impact on this Liverpool side, and he enables Salah and Mane the creative freedom to move forward and get into those attacking spaces. He's a really unselfish player, and you see bits of that against Burnley as well. Firmino has that selfish moment where he scores a goal, but he also leaves Mane and he also plays Salah in for chances. And you don't necessarily always see that with a player like Salah. There's every right to be greedy as a striker, but there's a player like Firmino looks at what's most important for the team, and that's the 3 points. So he's pivotal to that attack, and he enables Salah and Mane to get in the spaces and score the goals. So very selfless player, the highest goal scoring Brazilian in the Premier League as well now, which is a nice stat for Liverpool fans. So yeah, he's really important to that team.
Yeah, I think that was he just hit the 50, hasn't he? From what I remember. Yeah. So your score prediction on this one, the Liverpool and Newcastle game?
I'm going to go for Liverpool 4, Newcastle 0. I think it'll be relatively straightforward. I could be completely wrong, like I was on a couple of the games on my last set of predictions, but I think Liverpool have got too much about them. Newcastle still a club in turmoil. still a club with potentially huge financial ramifications if it goes wrong with the ownership as well and the season tickets. So I think you could expect Liverpool to be quite dominant at home. I think if we're talking goal scorers, you can see Salah scoring, you can see Firmino getting on the sheet, and Mane potentially as well. So, but it's the midfield and the impact that can have on the game, and someone like Van Dijk from set pieces is a huge threat as well. So there could be a wide variety of goal scorers, but 4-0 is the score that I'm going for.
Yeah, I do think you're going to win, and I would put it down to a 3-0 myself. The only issue that I wouldn't put 4-0 is more that Mike and Matt would want it to be less, but no, I do think you will be dominant, and I think you'll have the majority of the ball, maybe up to 70% of the ball, and just show the class at Anfield, and it'll be nice to watch, and it'll be live on BT Sport if anybody wants to watch that one. 3 o'clock kickoff is Brighton versus Burnley. That's at the Amex Stadium at 3 o'clock. They both lost their last match. Obviously, Burnley lost to yourselves, that's Liverpool, and Brighton lost against Man City, which everyone expected to. Really, I think they're both coming off a loss. They're quite evenly matched. Brighton have had a decent start. I'd be looking for more a Brighton win because they are at home, and I think they've got the eagerness to push forward, and they probably haven't got a lot of people in the squads that have been on this international break, and they've been able to study their opponent a bit more, and I'd like to see them win. Brighton, for me, have been quite impressive so far this season, so I think I'd probably go for a 2-1, expecting Burnley to get one. What are your thoughts?
I'd disagree, to be honest. I think Burnley have much better attacking options in Ashley Barnes and Chris Wood. Brighton, yes, started the season really well with a huge win against Watford, but since then haven't really done a lot. They've got 4 points from 4 games, and I don't think Burnley have too much more. But I can just see Burnley being a lot more defensively organised. Sean Dyche plays quite defensive football, quite tactically sound football. So I think Ashley Barnes could be on the score sheet. I'm going to go 2-0 to Burnley.
Yeah, I'm hoping that Ashley Barnes does win, because then I get some fantasy football points.
Maybe you'll get some points for a change, Aid.
Yeah, that would be nice, yeah. Oh, thanks for that, Jack. The next 3 o'clock is Man United versus Leicester City. Man United drew their last game against Southampton, and Leicester beat Bournemouth. Quite an impressive win. I don't know, it's a tricky one because Man United have had a difficult couple of weeks, and Maguire, we mentioned in the international break, hasn't had the greatest of times, although he has played a lot better in the Kosovo match. For this one, obviously they'll need that win, but Leicester City aren't an easy opponent. I don't know, I'm going to edge the way of Leicester coming away with a win here. Maybe something higher scoring. I'm going to go for like a 3-2 to Leicester with Maddison with 2 assists. Yeah, let's go with that.
If we're making bets on assists, that's obviously the one you'd go for with Maddison. The creative influence that he's got at Leicester now, and the way he feeds into players like Jamie Vardy and Harvey Barnes, it's really important to that team. I can see, as we know, Manchester United have struggled, but I can see Leicester causing a couple of problems, and it'll be an interesting game for players like Harry Maguire facing their old club. So we'll see how he defends against players that he's used to training with. Coming at it from a point of view that I always think Manchester United as of being a big club and getting results late on in games, I wouldn't be surprised to see them win. But I'm actually going to go quite the opposite here, and I'm going to go for a Leicester 1-0 victory at Old Trafford to silence the crowd. Jamie Vardy late winner. I just don't think Manchester United have looked great this season at all. They're flat against Chelsea with 4-0, and I don't think they've looked great all season. So Leicester, I can see coming away with 3 points.
Good. Well, we agree on that one at least, eh? No, I agree. I would like Leicester to get up there in the top 6 eventually. They are a good squad, and it is a good squad that they haven't bought everyone to make their squad. You know, there's quite a few players that, you know, they're not worth 50 to 100 mil. You know, they just hard grafting players. So it's good to see. Moving on to the Sheffield United and Southampton game at Bramall Lane. This is another 3 o'clock kickoff. Sheffield United ended up 2-2 draw with Chelsea. They did get that late equaliser, which, like we were saying before, Chelsea haven't had the best of times, and Sheffield United have looked strong in places. And Southampton, they drew against Man U the previous Premier League week, and they've got a lot of going for them, the Saints, up front. And I don't know, it's going to be a difficult one for Sheffield United. And I think, although I really like the way they're playing and the effort and all the charisma they've got into the football at the moment, I do think Southampton will have the edge over this and might just go for a 1-0 win to Southampton. And I think Sheffield United will put a lot of defensive tactics in place and just try and get a counter-attack if they can. So, yeah, 1-0 Southampton for me. What do you feel?
I think it's going to be a really close game between the two sides. I don't think there's too much to actually separate them. Southampton obviously have a lot more experience of Premier League football in recent years, but the last time these two teams went head-to-head in the Premier League was 1994, and that was a 0-0 draw between the two sides. And that season, they drew both games 3-3 and 0-0. So head-to-head record, you can't go off that now because the teams are completely different. I would say that Sheffield United have started the season really, really well. They've looked attacking at times. Robinson looks a really good threat out wide and feeding the strikers in. Had a great game against Chelsea, and McBurney has done pretty well since coming into the fold as well. Southampton have much better attacking options and defensive options. They've got a much better squad overall, and I can see them being more defensively organised. But Sheffield United are quite an attacking side, and that can sometimes fluster Southampton. So I think it'll be a close game. I'm going to potentially go for a no-score draw. I'm going to go for 0-0 again.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be the most interesting games to watch. So it's probably good that it is at 3 o'clock, not one of the Sky TV or BT Sport. But yeah, the next one might be more interesting to watch, and that's the Tottenham versus Crystal Palace at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So Tottenham drew Arsenal last time, and we're lucky to draw. Arsenal should have won, in my opinion. They had a lot more about them, and Crystal Palace, they did beat Villa and probably did deserve to beat them, although we should have drew at the last moment. But still, I think with this game, it's going to be quite end-to-end. I mean, looking at the last 6 fixtures, Tottenham have had the upper hand 5 out of 6 times, but Crystal Palace have had a great start to the season. I think they are about 4th in the league at the moment, and I really think they'll get something out of this game. And Tottenham will go at them really fast paced for the first 45 minutes like they have with everyone else, and maybe Crystal Palace's tactics will be just try and tire themselves out, make sure they go into the second half and they know they can then start pushing for their counter attacks. So I would expect Tottenham to score, but Crystal Palace maybe to edge it, maybe a 2-1 to Crystal Palace myself.
I think what we're going to see is two teams that have had very contrasting start to the season. Tottenham currently sitting 9th in the league on 5 points, renowned for not playing great football at this current point in the season. They don't usually start this poorly, but Spurs don't look great. I think the international break may have helped a couple of players find a rhythm again. So Harry Kane could be back and firing. And we saw it at parts. Yes, they didn't deserve to get the point against Arsenal, we can say, but they got the goals that mattered, and it's the same against Man City. So I don't think you can count them out. Palace sitting 4th in the league on 7 points. So if you're going on a points basis and start to the season, you'd say that Palace can cause a lot of trouble for Spurs. I'm looking at it from the point of view that I think Spurs have much better options on the field than Palace. So much more quality going forward. Obviously, you talk about the importance of players like Ayew and certainly Zaha for Palace and Van Arnold as well. So they have players that have scored goals this season and that can create chances. But Tottenham, I think, have too much quality to continue to drop points, and I think this is where they really kick into gear this season. So I can see Tottenham walking away with a 2-0 win, especially being at home. yes, they've struggled at times this season, and they haven't really haven't had a good start and got off to the races. But I can see this one go in their favour, whether it be from a VAR decision. But I can't see Palace walking away with anything this weekend.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about VAR this week. It's been quite nice to not be talking about all the problems, to be honest. But I'm sure next week we'll be like, oh, you remember that fly that was in the way of the camera and they had to restart the game? Yeah. But yeah, I see what you're saying, and I do think Tottenham. Kane has obviously had a decent international break, but I don't know. We'll see. It's nice to have differing opinions because it means that one of us is going to be right. And then
I guess
can just
so.
jib you over text then.
I said a couple of weeks ago on the show that Kane's reputation might get the better of him, and it's actually could have proven true this season. He's had two key moments in games one against Arsenal and one against Newcastle where they've been match-defining moments, and it's not gone his way. You can make arguments either side for both of the occasions that he's been involved in, but I stand by what I said about the reputation maybe superseding the decisions, and the referees may have that preconception in their mind that Kane might have gone down with light contact. So I think that will be a huge part, and Harry Kane is a massive part of which way that result goes. So Tottenham should look forward to the weekend expecting the points, but Palace are certainly not a team to be taken lightly.
The last 3 o'clock kickoff is Wolves versus Chelsea. Wolves lost against Everton last week and Chelsea drew against Southampton. I can see Wolverhampton Wanderers bouncing back with this one a little bit, but I still haven't seen the Chelsea that should be with the amount of class and the amount of money they've got into squad. And they've got a lot of youth players, as we said many times before. And maybe the thrill of the international break gives them brand new hope and they want to get that result. But it's not going to be easy at Molineux. There's such a loud crowd and I'm sure it's very daunting. I haven't been there myself. If you were on the pitch, I'm sure it's quite a scary moment if you're an away team. The score itself, I don't know. Wolves are usually really strong at the back. They didn't have a great week last week, but I'm sure they would have rectified all those errors this week. So I don't see Chelsea scoring that many. I don't know. I'm going to go for a 2-0 to Wolves on this one.
Yeah, I'm going to completely agree on the scoreline prediction. I'd go 2-0 Wolves. The reason for doing so is Chelsea. I think their squad, there's a couple of kinks that need ironing out. Creatively, they've been pretty impressive at times. Mason Mount and Tammy Abraham have been the standout performers this season. I don't think they've looked great in a lot of areas. Kepa's looked pretty solid and actually fallen victim to being left in a bit of no man's land at times. But Wolves are a really good side, and Molineux at its finest with the atmosphere can be like a cauldron. So Chelsea players aren't going to find it easy this weekend. I can see, again, surprise result, but I can see Wolves 2-0. I think you could see potentially a screamer from Ruben Neves. Jota is again always a threat. Raul Jimenez has just started to fire goals in the back of the net now, so he's coming into some form. So Chelsea are going to struggle, especially with a young defence. It's whether or not they play Zuma, whether Rudiger comes back into the fold, whether Tomori gets a go. So there's a lot of questions that will be asked of that Chelsea defence this weekend, and Wolves will be more than up for the challenge, and they'll want to claim the scalp of Chelsea, definitely.
The last Saturday kickoff is Norwich City versus Manchester City at Carrow Road, live on Sky Sports at 5:30. You've got Norwich, who are not having the best of times really this season so far. They're stuck down in 19th position. They've lost their last 2 games, and where we've got Man City, who are having a pretty good season so far. We always say City, and I can't see anything but City winning this one, to be honest. The only thing is the worry for Man City is the Laporte injury. They might bring in Garcia or I think he did mention one of his youth players, Howard Bellis. I don't really know much about him, but he did say in his press conference, Guardiola, that he might look to his youth for replacements, which I think, would be nice to see different talent pulling through the ranks as well, which injuries are bad things, but then you do see other talent come forward. It was nice to see Adrian for Liverpool, for example, come through. He's a nice character. He's very smiley, and I hope that's where injuries are really bad things, but they're also good for rotation people, backup players that need that break sometimes to let them go to the forefront. So with the actual scoreline, I'm gonna go for a 5-1 to Man City.
Yeah, I don't think you'll be far off the mark. If you ever say City are going to score 4 or 5, I think you'll come pretty close. They're obviously they're immense moving forward. Sterling, Aguero, Jesus, Mahrez, Sane, unfortunately out with an injury that's probably going to take him, probably going to keep him out all season. De Bruyne is back into the fold now and offers a lot of versatility in the midfield and the attack. David Silva can score goals. They've got a whole squad that can score. Norwich have popped up with a couple of goals this season, and Pukki's has been a really important figure within those and scored most of them as well. Norwich, I can't see them offering too many issues, but City will probably dominate the play as always, score early on, and then we might see the floodgates open. From a league point of view, I think City are going to be a huge contender, and they're obviously the favourites alongside Liverpool. But there are a couple of other options. Norwich, I think it'd be nice to see a team like that stay in the Premier League. Based on the football, they've been quite positive in the play, and then they've moved the ball and created a lot of chances. So Pukki, I can see scoring. I think City will win 4-1.
It's got 2 more fixtures on the Sunday. We've got Bournemouth versus Everton. That's at the Vitality Stadium at 2 o'clock. That's live on Sky Sports. Bournemouth lost to Leicester the previous week, and Everton beat Wolves. A well-deserved one in our opinion, but Wolves didn't have the greatest of games, and Everton had, although I think each week we've said something negative and something positive about it, they haven't had the best start. I mean, performance-wise, they do look strong, but I suppose they're not getting many goals to put themselves forward, although they are up there after 4 weeks. With this one, I do think they've definitely got the edge over Bournemouth, and I probably will be not a walk in the park, but it'll definitely be a challenge for them, considering a few of the Everton team are on international break. So will they be a bit fatigued? I'm not sure, but I would maybe go for maybe a 2-0 win to Everton on this one myself.
Yeah, I can see Everton coming away with the victory as well. I think they might actually find it a little bit easy in that. My prediction would be 3-0. I think they've started to come into their own. They played really well against Wolves and got the job done. So I think Bournemouth, yes, a very good side. They've got great defenders like Nathan Ake, and they've got good attacking options. Callum Wilson might not have had the greatest start, but he's always a constant threat. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Everton come away with the points. Bournemouth might actually do something within the game as well. Both teams have been quite lucky this season with injuries, and as you mentioned, with injuries as well. One thing I'd like to point out is that Trent Alexander-Arnold's success, going back to Guardiola claiming he's going to put a youth prospect in, Trent Alexander-Arnold actually, the whole career around in Liverpool was off the back of a Nathaniel Clyne injury, and he came in and played Manchester United, and that was the making of a youngster. So if both teams can avoid injury all season, then I think they'll both be looking at mid-table finishes. Everton obviously aspiring to get in that top 6 as well. So I think it very much depends on the day factors. Everton, I think Moise Kean might pop up on the score sheet. Iwobi's looked really, really promising at times as well. Richarlison's a big impact within that Everton side. So and Bernard's a great attacking threat. So I can see them coming away with a 3-0 win.
Mike and Matt will be quite happy with that result then. Yeah, either of those results, the 2 or the 3. They'll be overjoyed, I'm sure. The The other fixture on the Sunday is Watford versus Arsenal, and that's at 4:30 live on Sky Sports at Vicarage Road. So Watford drew against Newcastle last week, and that's the only point they've gained over the last 4 weeks, which obviously explains the managerial changes at that club. And then where Arsenal drew against Spurs, where they probably should have won. They had 26 shots, 8 on target, especially in the second half. They should have really made it their own. I think with this one, Arsenal will definitely take it, in my view. Watford, they are not a great side, they are a good side, and they have got a lot about them, but they haven't had the greatest start of the season. And I think even with the new managerial expertise back at the helm, they've still got to take time to make changes, and either way I wouldn't see them beating Arsenal on a good day. Arsenal are looking relatively strong, so I'm going to go with maybe a 3-0 myself to Arsenal on the day. What's your score prediction?
I'd probably go along the similar lines of yourself. I think Arsenal will quite easily walk through Watford this weekend, and I think that's just a factor of a new manager coming in, and he'll want to make changes, but teams very early on, it can go one way or the other. So when Brendan Rodgers took over Leicester, they got a cracking result against Liverpool, and that's just the way it works, and it can go those ways. Arsenal, I think if you revert back a year, you'd expect Watford to actually get the 3 points here, and it could be along those lines of Watford as the home team, Arsenal maybe not travelling well away. I think you could see a shock, but Aubameyang, Nicolas Pepe, Alexander Lacazette, there's too much quality in that attack not to score goals, and Watford haven't been high scoring this season, therefore, and quite poor defensively, so I think they might invite a couple of problems of their own this weekend. So I'm going to go for Arsenal 4, Watford 1.
Oh yeah, you're reckoning they're going to score, do you? I suppose because it is at home, so they might get one in.
I think Deeney is always a threat, and Danny Welbeck, maybe against his old club as well, might fancy popping up with a goal. So you never know. De La Feu's a good player and a keen favourite at Mike's as well. But I think Watford from set pieces can offer problems. I don't think they'll offer too many, but I think they have the players capable of converting if they get a chance. So 4-1 Arsenal still the prediction.
So the last fixture of Week 5 of the Premier League is on Monday this time round, Monday the 16th of September. It is Aston Villa versus West Ham United. That is live on Sky Sports at Villa Park at 8 p.m. Obviously, last time we saw Villa not having the best of times. They did lose against Crystal Palace. They still kind of look strong, but they're just not getting the result. The performance is there at times, but they are still moulding together. There are a lot of new faces in the locker room, and you would probably expect this. They haven't been dreadful, and they haven't been amazing. So I'm hoping they have had a bit of time over the last couple of weeks to gel a bit more. It's given them that time where they can really hone in the tactical knowledge and working together, know when to make the runs and everything like that. Where West Ham, they beat Norwich last week, and they've got huge potential going forward with Haller. Now he scored, I think, 2 games in a row, maybe 3 games, and you've got Lanzini who's come back into the frame, and he's starting to have week after week of decent performances. And I think I mentioned last podcast that West Ham are 7 points above where they were this time last season, which shows that, you know, they are more of a threat this season, and not going to be an easy ride for Villa this time round. And I don't know, I obviously am a fan of Villa, but I really can't see them winning this one, even though it's at home. So I'd like to put forward maybe a 1-1 draw on this particular fixture.
Yeah, it's a tricky fixture to predict. I never like to bet on West Ham because they can go very much one way or the other, and they're a bit of a yo-yo team. They get a result one week, they get thumped the next. Villa, you'd have said the same against Everton, that they weren't the side that you'd expect to come away with the points, and They played well against Spurs. I don't necessarily think they've played bad football this season. They're building a new system and they've signed a lot of players. That's always going to take time to gel. But West Ham look like a team on the rise. Haller's now on the score sheet and has been in the last 2 games, including getting a brace against Watford. So he's going to be a threat for West Ham. And Felipe Anderson is definitely the bright spark in that team. I can see West Ham potentially walking away with a 2-1. I think it will be a tight affair. Villa won't want to give too much away. And I can see West Ham coming away with the 3 points, but it being a tricky game. Villa could potentially find themselves in trouble this early on in the season, positionally in the league. But I don't think there's too much to be concerned about just yet. If these results are still happening around Christmas time, then maybe then it's when you should be concerned. But I can see West Ham walking away with the points. Sorry, Aid.
And what was your score again?
2-1 West Ham.
Well, that's all those fixtures for week 5 of the Premier League season, starting back this Saturday. I don't know, I think it's a mixed bag. It's really hard to predict anyway, because unless it's a Liverpool or Man City match, there's no way of me going, well, yeah, you really think they're going to win, but also in your back of your mind, you're like, well, it's really difficult to predict because not everyone's been on form. Like Chelsea, Tottenham, for example, you'd always expect them to win the matches they're coming up. So, like the Chelsea and Wolverhampton one, you know, if you saw it on a piece of paper, you go, well, Chelsea going to win. But it's just a weird moment at the moment. I think that's what's so exciting about the league at the moment is there's so many fixtures that you look at, you don't know what the result's going to be, and that's the exciting bit. Is anything can happen at the moment.
Yeah, the way that the league's going already this season is any team can beat any team, and I think looking at 2 teams that are key in this is actually Liverpool and Arsenal. You can look at them for very different reasons. Liverpool might see this as the best opportunity they'll have in a long, long time of winning the league, and people will say that about last season, but this season is key. City have already dropped points, and a lot of clubs around a similar level as Manchester United, Chelsea, are dropping points to the likes of Wolves, to Crystal Palace, to Sheffield United, even to Southampton, and clubs of that level that are kind of floating around the mid-table to bottom half of the table. So there's a lot of big clubs that have already dropped points, and that's why Arsenal are key in everything here, because they will see this as their best opportunity to get back into the Champions League as well. So Liverpool have opened up a slight advantage. The Premier League has started really, really well, and there's been some shock fixtures already, some shock results. Crystal Palace beating Manchester United being one of them as well, and they've crept out of nowhere to get 7 points from their opening 4 games because they didn't look too promising pre-season when Wilfred Zaha's handing a transfer request in. But there's a lot of different games and a lot of clubs at a similar level that can beat any team on their day. So the unpredictability of the Premier League is obviously what makes it the best league in the world.
Definitely is. And I think that pretty much wraps it up there, Jack. I want to thank you for helping us out this week, and hopefully I win the predictions this week. I mean, you do really well with the predictions this week, and we can talk about how well everybody did and everything next week. And thanks for also reviewing the international fixtures with England. I know the Kosovo match was definitely probably one that everyone needs to watch in the highlights of how many goals there were. So with this, if you'd like to get in contact with us, please follow us on Twitter at SciFootPassPod, where if you drop us a message or follow us, retweet us, or however, we'd definitely really appreciate that. If you want to download or subscribe to the podcast, we are on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and on Spotify. And if you haven't got any of those mediums, we are also on YouTube for you to listen to whenever you like. And that's it this week. So thanks, Jack, for joining us.
Not a problem. Thank you for having me on the show again.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you again. Bye-bye.
Was I meant to say goodbye at the end?